Fear is an extremely powerful emotion. It can cripple us with inaction or it can drive us to create positive change in our lives. This can be especially true when it comes to retirement planning. So, in this video, I'm going to address 5 common retirement fears that I've observed over my career as a financial planner, as well as ways that you can overcome these fears for a more stress-free retirement. Hopefully, by the end of this video, you have some ideas to take away and be less fearful and more excited about your own retirement. Make sure you pay close attention to number 4 on this list, as it's the most common one that I see immediately after people retire. Hey everyone, if we haven't met yet, my name is Jake Skellhorn. I'm a certified financial planner and the co-owner of Spark Wealth Advisors, where we help people retire with confidence and clarity. So let's get right into it. The first fear that I see people have about retirement is the fear of running out of money. So it can be called longevity risk, outliving your nest egg, whatever you want to call it. It's the fear that you're going to run out of money before you pass and not be able to basically pay your expenses. There's a few ways that you can overcome this fear, but number one, I would say, is start planning for retirement and saving for retirement as early as possible. So if you're someone watching this who's not quite a year or two away from retirement, save as much as you can, and that's only going to benefit you in the long run. This is obviously nothing new. The more you save, the more you'll have later. But it's extremely important if you're in your earlier years. By building that financial habit now, it's going to benefit you in the long run. Some other ways that you can overcome this fear are to potentially look into annuities for retirement. Annuities offer you a guaranteed income stream for either your entire life or you and a spouse's life. I would approach annuities with caution, however. They're often oversold to people who don't necessarily need them. They are high commission products that pay the salespeople quite a lot of money to sell them. So definitely be cautious, do your research and due diligence first. But annuities can be a great solution for some people who simply can't sleep at night because they are fearful of running out of money. But other solutions would include a dynamic spending strategy. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know I'm a big fan of the guardrail spending strategy, which essentially aims to prevent you overspending and underspending in retirement by adjusting your income based on your portfolio. I'll include a link to a more detailed video on that. And lastly, I would say it's super important to reduce your fixed expenses as much as possible before you retire. Pay off all your debt if you're close to doing so. That way, most of your income needs from your portfolio would be discretionary and you can cut back on them if needed to preserve your portfolio. But again, most importantly, start planning as early as possible for retirement. That way you can reduce your stress about running out of money. Another common fear, and I think is a very timely one, is skyrocketing inflation. Obviously, the past few years have been pretty rough with inflation. I think the worst of it is behind us now here in 2024. Number one way that you can combat inflation is, of course, to invest in appreciating assets like the stock market. Real estate, some people prefer a little bit less passive, of course, but historically speaking, the average return of the stock market has been somewhere near 3 times the rate of inflation. Obviously, that comes with some short-term volatility on any given year, but you can plan around that by putting a portion of your expenses in less risky assets like cash and bonds. That way you know that money is going to be there for the next X number of years worth of your expenses. Something I see a lot is people approach retirement and think that they should sell everything in their portfolio, go to 100% cash because they don't want any risk in their portfolio. But in reality, the biggest risk that many retirees face is inflation risk. So everything that you buy this year is going to be more expensive next year and the year after that. So over the long run, this can have a compounding effect, just like returns in the stock market. So again, you should still have a balanced portfolio in retirement in most cases. Otherwise, you face the risk of depleting your portfolio much quicker. Outside of stocks, there are, of course, other asset classes that can combat inflation, such as real estate investment trusts and TIPS, or Treasury inflation protected securities. These are generally regarded as lower risk options, maybe more suitable for short-term portion of your portfolio. Something else that you can do to combat inflation would be to buy your groceries and household items in bulk. I personally do a lot of my shopping at Costco and save a ton of money each month by doing so, as opposed to going to the grocery store every couple of days. So that's something else that you can do to combat inflation outside of just the investment piece. Third on the list here is healthcare costs. So obviously, once we leave the workforce, health insurance is no longer covered if it ever was by your employer. Medicare kicks in at 65, of course, but oftentimes you need a Medigap or Medicare Advantage policy in addition to that. If you're planning on retiring before 65, you absolutely have to budget in healthcare expenses between that age and 65 when Medicare kicks in. So going back to the most important thing is plan ahead, budget healthcare expenses separately from your normal monthly discretionary expenses in retirement. You can, if you're eligible, also make sure that you're fully utilizing a health savings account to save for healthcare related expenses in retirement. Those have special tax advantages that you don't get in a regular brokerage account or bank account. So also make sure you're budgeting for long-term care expenses in the latter years of your retirement. That can be extremely expensive for in-home care. So a lot of people will use a reverse mortgage for this if you don't have enough money in your investment accounts or bank accounts. So make sure that you're, again, factoring that into your retirement plan if you're doing this yourself. Lastly, it goes without saying, but try to lead a healthy lifestyle in retirement. Eat clean, exercise as much as possible. A lot of times that's pretty difficult in our working years since we don't have a lot of time during the week to plan these things out or go to the gym. But once you retire, you have generally a lot more time on your hands. So make sure that you're dedicating at least some of that time to exercise and eating well. Number 4, and again, the most common fear that I see people have as soon as they retire is stock market volatility. In most cases, to reach your financial goals and spending desires in retirement, it's necessary to keep at least a portion of your portfolio invested in the stock market. The way I like to frame it is by designating a certain number of years worth of your expenses into safer assets like cash and bonds. You know that you have a safety net there for not if, but when the stock market crashes during your retirement. Historically speaking, there's a bear market or a 20% downturn about every 4 years, so it is bound to happen. But when that happens, you simply don't touch your stock investments for income. You leave them alone while they have a chance to come back like it always has, and you pull your income from those safer assets instead. When the stock market recovers, you simply replenish the bucket that has your shorter term expenses and rinse and repeat. This is commonly known as the bucket method because it divides up your investments into 3 different buckets based on when you're going to need that money and has a plan for which ones to pull from based on certain market conditions. Another way to deal with stock market volatility is to use the guardrail spending strategy. Again, if you haven't heard me talk about that yet, I'll include a link to that, a more detailed video on that. But essentially, guardrails is a spending strategy that increases or decreases your monthly spending depending on the performance of your portfolio. So if you do experience a stock market crash early in your retirement, you simply cut spending by a small amount. It's usually about 5% temporarily until the market recovers. Conversely, if your returns of your portfolio are higher than expected, then you get to give yourself an increase in income. So these are a couple ways that you can deal with stock market volatility and overcome that fear in retirement. And the last common retirement fear that I see is regarding Social Security, whether it be Social Security being cut or becoming insolvent at some point in the future, or timing your claiming strategy wrong. Even though the math says in most cases to delay Social Security at least until full retirement age or later, a lot of people want to claim it as early as possible at 62 because, again, going back to no one knowing how long they're going to live, they want to take it as early as possible. So as a financial planner, I don't often push people to delay it if they don't want to. In my opinion, it's not worth losing sleep over. As long as you understand that you do get a reduced benefit at 62 and you may live to an age where it would have made more sense claiming at 67 or 70, I rarely push back on people who want to claim at 62 because there is that emotional benefit of being able to sleep better at night, knowing that you're getting your benefit that you work so hard for. As far as Social Security running out or becoming insolvent, I personally don't think that's as big of a risk as you might read in the headlines. Too many people rely on Social Security for half or more of their retirement income that I think it would be a massive disaster if the government completely got rid of Social Security. There are a few small tweaks that can be made to make sure that it is funded for the next 30 years or so. Some of these solutions would include raising the full retirement age, which on the surface might anger a lot of people, but since the last time that was updated, life expectancies have increased, so this would kind of make sense. Another solution I've read is increasing the payroll taxes on Social Security, increasing the Social Security wage base so that higher earners pay more into it. At worst, there is a possibility of benefits being cut in the future, but I doubt it's ever going to go away completely, again, because of how many people rely on it for their sole income. With that said, if you're in the early stages of planning for retirement in your younger years, I encourage you to save as much as possible in your own accounts so that you don't have to rely on Social Security for as much of your income regardless. So that's it for this video. I hope this gave you some ideas on how to overcome some of these common fears if you had any of them yourself. On that last note about Social Security, again, there are plenty of people who want to claim it as soon as possible, which I don't always disagree with. In fact, I did make a video recently about 7 good reasons that you should claim Social Security at 62. If you want to check that out now, here it is. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.